Writers with ADHD, have you ever been frustrated with the standard advice about managing your writing life? Disappointed that it doesn't seem to work for you? Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to the Write Anyway podcast from Pages and Platforms and the Happily Ever Author Club. In today's episode, Rochelle talks with certified book coach and editor Nicole Bross about strategies and tools she's developed for herself as a neurodivergent author. Nicole is the author of A Novel Approach, Strategies for ADHD Writers, a writing guide for neurodiverse authors whose ADHD is getting in the way of finishing their books. Let's listen in.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm pretty excited to be talking to another ADHD writer today, so hopefully that'll go well and we won't steer people off into a number of tangents.
Yeah, it tends to happen, doesn't it?
It does. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today is because you have a book that's coming out, and one of the things that you focus on is, let's say, the ADHD writer's challenge with the problem they might present would be, I'm feeling unmotivated to write. What should I do?
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
Do you have any advice for somebody who's like, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling unmotivated?
One of the biggest points of advice I would say is to really dig into where that lack of motivation comes from. Is it because, you're bored with your book, you're bored with your story? Is it because you don't really like the act of sitting down and writing at the moment? Are you not motivated because you have another project in mind that you want to be doing instead? So digging into kind of the background of it is really important in, getting that information, and then you know how to fix it so that you will become motivated.
And so they can identify what the challenge is in particular, then they can work specifically on that. And what are the kinds of things that you suggest writers do to sort of prop all that up? What are some of the tips, tricks that you have for helping people get motivated to write?
Well, it depends again on what that issue is. So, for example, if you're bored with the story that you're writing, you might want to go back and look at your outline again. Are the scenes that you're working on right now not something that you're really interested in? And if so, why? And in some respect, that boredom can actually be a benefit. I think that there are kind of hidden benefits to ADHD. And so if you're bored with your story, it might mean that you need to look at, doing something different, making things more complicated, adding a twist in there. So that can actually be really advantageous. If you're bored with the act of sitting down and writing, you can change it up by doing different things. You can work in a different place than where you normally work. If you find your office or whatever, it just isn't giving you much inspiration, go to the library, go to a cafe, even sit in a different place in your house, sit at the kitchen table instead. See what that does. You can try handwriting instead of typing, or you can try voice dictating into a voice memo and then transcribing that later. So yeah, both of those, depending on what the issue is in the first place, can really help kind of get you moving again.
One of the things that I think you talk about in the book is about accountability, and there being two different kinds of accountability. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's internal accountability, which is basically promises that you make to yourself. So you tell yourself, I'm going to write today, or I'm going to finish this book by September, or whatever. And so, you're making a commitment to yourself. And those can be really difficult for people with ADHD because of all of the challenges with things like distraction and disorganization. Sometimes it's easy, even forgetfulness, to let those slip by. And then you feel really down on yourself because, you feel like you failed yourself. The other one is external motivation, which is when you make a promise to somebody else. And that might be something like an accountability partner, for example, somebody that you match up with, or an accountability group, or you make commitments to each other to get things done. And that can be a lot more motivating for people with ADHD, and I think anybody as well, because we tend to value promises to others more highly than we value promises to yourself. So if you know that somebody is counting on you to read your 10 pages on Friday, you're going to sit down and do it because you don't want to let them down.
Do you have any other suggestions for external accountability, what that might look like?
Besides having a dedicated accountability partner, you can do something like body doubling, which is where you just decide to meet up with somebody and work together. And you don't even have to be working on the same thing. One of you might be writing and the other one might be, doing, homework or an assignment, or making, their meal plan for the week. But the point is that you're working side by side. And again, if you're with somebody else that is sitting down and doing their work and focusing, you look at them and you go like, I can do that too. You don't want them to feel like you're not kind of meeting their energy, I guess, or meeting their vibes.
Any other ideas for creating external accountability?
Those are the main three. You can do things like, word count tracking, for example, setting goals like that. That tends to kind of sit on both sides because it is, also a promise to yourself, but it's also an external motivator, something that you're working toward.
Sometimes I suggest that people hire a developmental editor or a book coach for that. I mean, sometimes the external accountability needs to be professional. So you were talking about having like a writing partner or a writing buddy. A lot of people, they have a challenge with finding the right person or the right people. Do you have any suggestions for, kind of creating that partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends a little bit on, first of all, how you want to meet or match up. If it's important that you work together in person, then obviously you're going to look to your local writing community. A lot of people find it helpful to match with somebody who's working in the same genre or the same age category, so that it's easier to bounce ideas off each other if that's a part of your accountability process. Otherwise, online, the world is your oyster. There are a zillion different places where you can find people to match up with as far as accountability goes. Whether or not you decide to match with somebody that has ADHD as well is a personal decision that you have to make. Some people really like it because you understand each other's challenges and issues and you can kind of support each other in that way. Other people don't find it's as important. And I guess it's important to know that, you never have to disclose your neurodiversity to anybody if you don't want to. But if you felt like you were uncomfortable with your accountability partner sharing that, if it felt like something, that wouldn't make you feel good or that you wouldn't understand, I would say maybe that's not the best partner for you.
Yeah. Any suggestions for how to screen for a good partner?
A lot of it is just like, it's vibes, honestly. You get that feeling if you think you're a good match. Obviously, it depends on what's important to you. Again, whether it's availability, the type of accountability too is important. So if if you're planning on sharing pages with each other, you both obviously have to be comfortable with that. Not everybody likes to share their work before they've been through some rounds of edits and they just, more want to make promises to each other to get the work done. So finding somebody who has similar goals to you, and ideally someone who's kind of writing in the same area or genre, can be a good first couple steps to finding a good partner.
Okay. And so let me just to clarify, the things that you might do with a writing partner might be exchanging pages and discussing them. What else? What else might you do?
If you don't want to exchange pages, then you can just say, every week we're going to write 10 pages and we're going to check in with each other and see how we're doing. You can use those sessions too. You can either work together, then, make writing dates basically either online or in person. And you can just kind of support each other. If your goal is 10 pages a week or whatever by Friday and it's Thursday and, you're struggling, you have somebody to talk to about it and maybe they can offer some suggestions. Same thing with like brainstorming. If you're stuck on a plot point, for example, your accountability partner can be a good resource for working through that. So because you have somebody in your corner, it can make the process of writing easier.
Yeah. And you don't have to meet in person, right? You can meet on
all of my writing accountability sessions are online. Yeah.
Can you walk me through what an accountability session might look like for you?
So what I like to do, and I run free online writing sessions twice a month. What we do is we have a quick check-in to start. So everybody introduces themselves. You say a little bit about what you're writing and what your goal is. And then we like to do 2 45-minute sprints. Everybody turns their cameras and mics off. We write for 45 minutes. We have a short check-in in the middle where we say, how things are going. Do we have any challenges that have come up? And then we do another 45 minutes and then another quick check-in at the end to see if people have met their goals, how they're feeling. Again, if somebody wants to ask a question or get support from the other members of the group, then you can do that. And then we sign off until next time. You sign up through Eventbrite, but the link is on my website. And anybody is welcome, no matter what type of writing you're doing, no matter your experience level. It's even like writing adjacent things. Sometimes people will come and they'll be working on their query letter, for example, or they'll be doing revisions or, writing their next email newsletter. As long as it's kind of in the sphere of writing, anyone can come.
Is there anything else that, say, you find is a big challenge when an ADHD writer comes to you and says, I'm feeling unmotivated? Is there anything else that you would want to share with them?
Again, the first thing would just be to dig into why. and figure out what's behind that lack of motivation. And once we know that, then we can start moving forward with addressing it.
Yeah. A lot of times when I'm working with ADHD writers, the challenge is they're feeling overwhelmed. So what they're calling being unmotivated isn't necessarily their lack of motivation to write, but their feeling of overwhelm and wanting to avoid it. So that's a challenge that I see a lot in general. And that's often lacking because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that the solution to that would be maybe finding either you lack skills that you need, and there are certain skills that you can go and research and learn for yourself, or finding a developmental editor or a writing group that can help walk you through it. Sometimes the overwhelm isn't just an emotional problem, I'm assuming, but also a challenge with just lack of know-how.
For sure, yeah. And another issue that I also see often with overwhelm is a lack of organization. So they can't see, how everything is supposed to come together. It's too scattered. And so one of the big things that I recommend when it comes to overwhelm is looking at your organization. Do you have an outline written? Do you have all of your scenes kind of at least roughly mapped out so that you can break down the idea of like writing a book into something smaller, like writing a chapter or writing a scene? And when you can give, smaller kind of mini goals, then it can make it easier to move forward because you're only doing one little thing at a time.
So one of the things that they could do if disorganization is the challenge would be to write an outline so they can see their full story on, say, 1, 2, or 3 pages. It's compact. Here's what I have. And then any other suggestions on that organization?
You can do it in a visual way too. Like I really like the method where you write everything out, on a Post-it notes or cue cards or something, and then put them up on the wall, especially if you're kind of a visual learner, which a lot of people with ADHD are. And so then you can literally see the whole thing all in one piece at once, and even, move those pieces around physically, try this scene out over here, or maybe this, plot point works better over there. And that can really help too with that feeling of overwhelm because now you see it in all its individual smaller pieces.
Yeah. And those suggestions sound like something you would do sort of in the editing phase, like you're in your second draft and that sort of thing. Do you see too many challenges with ADHD writers in that initial drafting phase? Or does that seem to be like, I'm putting my heart and soul in it, I'm getting the story down, and it's only, say, when they think they finished the draft that they're like, oh no, now they have to put this in story form and story order? Or do you see a challenge generally?
I actually find it's more beneficial to do that outlining before you ever start, because a lot of people with ADHD have problems starting big projects or even just starting small projects at all because they blow it up into a bigger thing in their minds. Like I always find the idea of like cleaning the bathroom so overwhelming, but it's 4 small parts, clean the sink, clean the toilet, clean the mirrors, sweep the floor. And so the outline when it comes to writing, I think, especially if you're having problems getting started because you don't know how to, write a book, getting that outline sorted out ahead of time can be even more beneficial. It's also beneficial when you do it after you've written the first draft, especially if you've done more of like a discovery writing or a pantsing type method, and then it helps to piece all of those parts together. That's not how I write myself. Like I absolutely need to have the outline completely established before I start writing.
So that would be what we would call a plotter, right? And for the pantsers, the ones who want to write towards their story and then figure out the outline, are there any suggestions that you have for them?
Yeah, I think again, that's where some of the overwhelm comes in. I think if you're a pantser, then if you're not really feeling it in the scene that you're working on right now, just jump to something else. Because again, you're going to be putting all those pieces together later. So, if you're really excited about the big romantic scene between your 2 main characters or the big, fight scene, the war between 2 factions or whatever, write that if that's what you're really excited about. And then go back to what you're working on at another time, maybe when you find it more interesting.
And it could be that the part that you find not very interesting might be something you can just eliminate. One of the things that I like about having an outline, and I will generally be a pantser initially, and then when I start getting kind of stuck and slowed down, then I'll go in and write my outline. Okay, I'm heading towards this. How am I going to get there? But what I like it as somebody with ADHD, probably this is the reason, is that I like to go in and take my outline and say, okay, well, what's my assignment for today? because I've been trained for so many years to try to carefully meet the expectations of others, right? So going in and saying, okay, what's my assignment for today? Even though I assigned it myself, it seems to help me. So I can look at in there and maybe it color coded my outline or something. So red is not written, orange needs an edit, and green is, hey, I think this is good. This is published, which never perfect. I mean, let's just say you have that as a visual, then taking those assignments, what's red, what's still red, sometimes helps me just say, okay, what's next? Because like you said, that sense of overwhelm can just be shut down, and I don't want to work on it.
Absolutely. And I love to hear all the different ways that people outline and plan their projects because everybody's different. So definitely having it organized in that way would definitely be helpful. I've never tried that before, but I think that's pretty cool.
I'm always looking for ways to, how can I break this crap down smaller? Like this, if you look at the whole, oh my gosh, I got all these chapters. First of all, like you said, organize them into one place, get all your stuff together. I love Scrivener for that. I don't know about you, but I write in Google Docs because it's easier to manage. And then I transfer all I've written this piece. I put it in Scrivener in order so that I can see everything down the left side of my screen. I have all these things. Where's something missing? I like to do that, to just find ways to organize the mass of material that I can accumulate.
I do the opposite to you, actually. I write the first draft in Scrivener, and then once the first draft is done, I move it over into Word to do my revisions so that I can have it in one complete document instead of different, scenes or chapters. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think I might do both. I might be moving back and forth. But one challenge with that is you got to keep them both updated, right? So what you do in one, you need to correct in the other. But initially, when I'm putting my story together, I really like to have it in Scrivener where I can see the chunks. Which chunks do I still have missing? What have I written? Then I can see kind of on the left side of the screen, what am I repeating? Because that's a big thing. Like a lot of times I'll talk to ADHD writers who have written pretty much the same scene 3 times, right? So I've been guilty of that too. Like, but I really want this to happen. Well, it already happened.
I think one of the reasons why people are so resistant to doing an outline is because they feel it stifles their creativity. But it's like you said, you can update them as you go along. If you find that as you're writing, something better comes to mind, you can go into your outline and change it. It's not something that's completely set in stone. I think of them as like living documents that change and update. I find when I look at my original outlines for my first draft of the story compared to my final draft, they're often like so completely different.
Different stories even. Different story types. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope this is going to be helpful to some ADHD writers out there, or even people who don't have ADHD who are feeling like maybe they're unmotivated or overwhelmed. And
I hope so too. Help. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great.
Nicole's book, A Novel Approach, is available everywhere books are sold. For more information, visit her website, manuscriptalchemy.com. And if you'd like a weekly dose of writing insight, mindset, and marketing tips in your inbox, subscribe to the Write Anyway newsletter at pagesandplatforms.com/subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Write Anyway podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.